No, I haven't.
Yes, those.
I have a question,
Okay.
Larry.
Yes.
Were you on the planning board when they split with the village of Lansing?
No, I'm not quite that old.
I didn't think so, but I thought maybe you had some firsthand knowledge.
I do have some firsthand knowledge. Yeah.
Oh, we should talk sometime.
Yeah.
I'm just digging through my father-in-law's paperwork and came across a lot of that stuff. I'm like, oh, that'd be nice to have a discussion with somebody that knows a bit more than what my papers show.
Yeah. It was all over the original plans for the Pyramid Mall, actually.
Really?
Yeah. And Connie Cook enabled legislation in the assembly that allowed Lansing to be the only partially zoned town in New York State. So that the southern half of the town had zoning so they could have some control over that. But the people, a group of people, an influential group of people in the village, that wasn't enough to them. So they basically seceded from the town. And that's how the village came to be.
Oh, I guess I was reading it the other way around where the, I guess I was thinking it was the agricultural community which wanted to secede from the village.
It was definitely the village who opted out of being part of the town. There's a whole book on this if you're interested that you can read.
Yeah, send me the
I'll send you the link. Yeah.
Thank you.
If that were possible, Sandy, I think that there have been other changes made by now.
Okay. We ready, CJ?
Yep, we're ready to go whenever you're ready to open the meeting. We're streaming
All
live.
right. Bang, bang, bang goes the gavel. We'll have to enact time. And did I see, yes, Dale's here.
Yep.
We'll have to enact time and Dale tonight. Lynn's not here. Who else is missing?
Lynn is excused. He let us know earlier. Okay.
Dean was here, but he seems to have gone.
I see Dean.
I see Dean.
I don't see Dean.
I'm writing a fan letter to Deborah Trumbull.
Oh, not another one.
At least you can sort by first name.
Yeah, I
All
see.
right, we'll have the privilege of the floor. Do we have anybody signing in, CJ?
I don't believe so. Let me check a look here at the waiting room. See if anyone's here to comment. We are streaming live on YouTube. And I don't see comments right now. So no commenters as far as I see.
All right, well, if we don't have anyone for the privilege of the floor, we can move right into the land use ordinance audit. We can figure out where we were.
Okay. Yes, I think we left off at the section on uses. And I can bring the
Yes.
document up if you would like to see it on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, cool. There we go. All righty. And we could dovetail this discussion a bit into this. I don't know why I'm having feedback here, but we left off right about question 58 here regarding the short-term rentals, and hopefully you received the information that I sent around regarding the short-term rentals.
Here comes that rain.
Oh, by you.
I don't have any.
No rain here. Hopefully we don't lose anyone. But if we would like to discuss the short-term rentals further as a standalone issue outside of the audit, we can do that as well. as we did, I think with solar and wind. I think that was kind of treated as a separate issue. And if the planning board wishes to, of course, we can also do that.
You mean at a future date?
Joe,
Sorry, I'm not showing it.
Joe, where's the town of Ithaca on that? On that.
I'm not sure where they're at in process. They presented that to TCOG almost a year ago, and I don't know where they moved from there.
It seems like there are lots of moving parts.
Okay.
And
Of their
other statements.
I read
of their
through, I read through the proposed ordinance from the town of Ithaca, and first I was impressed that it was 4 pages only. Secondly, a lot of the stuff looks pretty standard when it's as applied to the rental contracts that a couple of the companies provide themselves. I did have some questions about, it said if you've got 2 rental properties on one parcel, that the owner could only rent 1 rental property at a time. And I think that could be a little bit more liberal.
No, I think it was saying that you couldn't go over 29 days in a calendar year. Don't remember it saying just 1 at a time being rented.
Let me see, I believe that was,
let's bring it up.
Ithaca. Although I guess they'll let you raise it up past 29 days if you have a reason. Yep, no STRs subject to more than 1 rental agreement at a time. Only 1 may be rented at any one time. Yep.
Yep. And, based on, I've been in situations where there've been 2 properties on the parcel. And actually, in order to get coverage for us, we've rented both parcels or both properties. And to me, that would seem parcel specific to put that limitation in without, you're not allowing somebody the full use of their land. But that's something that could be discussed.
Yeah.
And you're looking at the draft
Yes.
for the unhosted? Okay.
Yeah, I've got it opened. The one that you sent us, I've got it opened on my email on another screen.
I believe what they're trying to do is define short-term rental as only renting one of those properties at a time. If you want to be a long-term renter, you can rent your property out however zoning allows.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. If you've got a property, if you've got a parcel with 2 houses on it, this would mean that you wouldn't be able to rent both houses at the same time for a short term. And I can see there are many cases where I think that limitation is extreme.
Yep, I agree, especially if you come in with a big family that all wants to stay together and they end up both properties on the same parcel.
Yep.
That makes sense.
What would you consider short term then, Larry?
A week or less. The rentals that I've done have been for the space of a week.
Yeah, me too.
I can see, I know of cases where there are 3-day rentals, for instance, graduation weekend, homecoming, football games, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm I hate to admit my ignorance, but I'm not understanding the 3 numbered paragraphs below F and how they relate.
Yeah, I thought the same thing too. I didn't understand that at all either.
Has anybody got any enlightenment on that?
Well, an unhosted unit would be the one like we were talking about, where a family comes in and rents 1 or 2 houses on a property, but the unhosted means that the host isn't there or the owner isn't there. Hosted means that it's occupying a unit in property that is inhabited at the time by the owner. That's the way I understood it to mean.
Yeah.
I'm looking at page 2. Actually, page 3, the 1, 2, 3 there, and then in parentheses
Mm-hmm.
that fall under F.
Yeah,
So the owner satisfies one of the following criteria. Maybe that's in that you can have more days in a calendar year if you satisfy one of these 3 criteria. Is that
Right,
what
Ken?
it's
Yeah, like Larry was saying, although I think this could be hard to track, but a unit that is located on a parcel adjacent to the owner's primary residence parcel, but perhaps a number 4 could be a unit that is located on the same parcel, right? That could,
And that would allow you to have more than 29 days in a calendar year's worth of rentals.
now does that mean a rental lasting more than 29 days? Or does that
No.
mean the total number of days rented?
I tell you what, other than the town of Ithaca, it might behoove us to take a look at some areas like Hamilton County, town of Himrod, town of Star Lake, see what their regulations are, because they have properties that are rented week after week after week for the entire summer, which is definitely more than 29 days.
Yeah,
And they're in somewhat the same position that we are with Cayuga Lake being a primary place where people would go on vacation. If you have a property on the lake, if you could, and you had the opportunity to rent it for 5 weeks during the summer, it would appear to me that the 29-day limitation would be a little bit stifling.
yeah.
What's the rationale for the 29 days?
I got no idea. Joe, do you?
Basically, they were trying to look for the difference between someone who is renting out part of their house occasionally for some extra income versus somebody who's making a business out of it. And that's the line that they looked at and said that's probably the dividing line of renting it out a few days a month, a couple of weeks during the summer, a couple of weeks here and there.
So there would be another set of regulations for the other kind of rentals then?
I'm pretty sure if you're doing a commercial rental that you have to register with the town. I know they set up a new set of laws saying if you're renting out a place long-term, you have to register and you have to be sure that you've met certain building code criteria for a rental that's different than a residential, but I don't know the details of that.
yeah, and some of it's tied to the room tax also, like what defines a short-term rental.
Yeah, speaking for the rental that we're doing in August, I do know that the owner has been in, or will have been in occupancy for 4 weeks over the entire summer, and the rest of the time it's been rented out. But those weeks, you know, they'd be there for a week and then it'd be rented out for a couple of weeks and then they'd be there for a week and then, you know how that
Yeah,
kind of goes.
The town of Skinny Atlas went through this recently. We probably should take a look at their rules and regs in Skinny Atlas. They were pretty thorough on that.
Oh, good one.
Yeah, I'm sure they have a lot.
Okay.
I'm sure
Then
they've
you-
got plenty of rules.
All right. So I heard something about town of Milo, right? And then in Yates County. And then also Skinny Atlas. I think it's in the village, right? The village of Skinny Atlas changed their
Town.
zoning.
I think it's more the town actually, CJ.
Town also, huh?
Right. They've got a ton of rentals on that lake, both sides.
Okay. Well, we'll see what we can track down. There's also a sample I sent that was in the Association of Towns from the town of Geneva. Association of Towns was passing that one out as a template. I really, we can tailor this however you'd like. If there's some parameters you want to start with that you feel comfortable with and what you think would be appropriate, we can build it around that.
Well, I
Is
like
there-
what they say about, health and safety as far as giving the code office control over what's what. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Well, we're certainly wanting to make sure that they pay their room tax as well. I think that's an important component to, you're tapping into all of the advertising for bringing people into the county. And you're benefiting from that, so you should contribute as well.
I agree with that. My big concern with a lot of this is means of egress and fire safety and some of the other things that come to my mind that we have to do in hotels that don't always seem to run true in these kind of places. But I understand they're a whole different ballgame, but it seems to me that we have some sort of responsibility toward the public to make sure that or maybe the public has a responsibility to watch out for themselves.
We had that discussion a couple years ago.
Yes, I remember, but I can't remember what we decided.
Well, I don't think we ever decided anything. We just had a big discussion about.
Did when we were going through the comprehensive plan, was it, Sandy?
There's you addressed this in the comprehensive plan? I didn't.
Well, we had
No.
this discussion.
We just had a discussion.
Oh, okay. Because there is some information about short-term rentals here in the comprehensive plan. And it is, let's see what kind of guidance we can get here.
I think
Short-term
it's,
rentals more common, municipal concerns, liabilities, permits, taxes, safety of visitors. Okay. So if we start with that framework.
Negative changes to neighborhoods.
Yes, here we go. Do you like the framework that town of Ithaca is pursuing? It seems to be fairly wholesale. They have a lot of, I don't know if you got to click that link that I sent in the document or in the email, I'm sorry. Called establishing a residential renter property operating permit. I think that's what Joe was talking about, how they've established this whole scheme essentially here.
That makes sense. As I said, giving the code office control over making sure that the properties are safe and properly prepared for rental with regard to the safety of the people that rent the place.
Okay, so you'd see this going in an operating permit type of situation with an annual or set frequency set for essentially a health and safety inspection to be able to qualify for an operating permit.
I would think it'd be more of a fire inspection situation.
Sure,
Well,
yes.
the town of Ithaca can do that because they have a fire inspector. That's in town of Lansing. That would all be
On
under
Lynn.
the auspices of the code
Code
office.
enforcement.
Yeah,
Which point, he may need some help if we end up loading him down with some inspections for this.
well, and that brings up a question of would it be appropriate to ask the fire chief to lend some comments on whether they'd be willing to do some fire inspections? I think Lynn has done that training with him, and he could do those inspections.
Scott has
Scott.
had the Scott's had the training, and he's also been on fire inspections when Lynn couldn't do them.
Yep.
So
Yep,
I
that's
think
right.
more- But whether or not we want to load it on him or not, I don't know. So,
Well, that's a concern I've heard from Lynn about adopting short-term rentals. Is obviously his workload is already pretty significant, and he was concerned about taking this additional piece on. But if there was support from fire, and if you'd like, I could reach out to them and see if that's possible.
How big a problem do we think this is?
If we have no way of providing or monitoring protection and safety, then it's useless for us to have a law.
Right. But how many
agree with
of these
that,
do you
Larry.
think happen in a year?
well, we've already got a huge amount of people renting in the town. I mean,
We have any
there's
idea
not,
what
there's not
that-
many lake houses that aren't rented.
Yeah, but if you read the town of Ithaca's, standards here, it's not applicable on the lake shore or in ag areas or in
Yeah.
commercial areas. It's
Yeah.
only in residential neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Anybody else see that you are awesome, CJ?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So we
Was
went
it-
full circle right back to where we were.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I did look this up once upon a time, and I'm just can search my email here to tell you how many short-term rentals there are at least listed on VRBO and Airbnb.
You told us that last meeting.
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't remember what you said. It was more than I thought.
I came up with
That was a lot.
14 and I think you had double that.
Yeah, I think if you include both platforms, you end up with 30 something.
Ah,
Let's take a look. Just searching the email here, which is not very quick.
Those are just the units that are advertising on those platforms, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so here's that email from that time. I sent this to the town board back in, it was back in February. And it says about 30 in the town of Lansing. Now, there could be more, of course.
Does that include the ones that are advertising on both platforms?
It's their DNA.
Yes, I think so. Let's go check it out here. Oops. New share. All right, let's check it out. Okay, so this is this AirDNA platform I was telling you about. It's like aggregates data from VRBO and Airbnb and gives you, and here's the town. Although it doesn't follow perfectly. I don't know how they came up with these boundaries, but so it says there's 34 active rentals and it gives you some information about pricing and how many rentals are, how many are available. how many minimum nights there are, things like that. And I'll zoom in a little bit, and it gives you, once you zoom in a little bit, you can see where they're located. So we could just grab, this one, for instance. And this will give us information about the rental, the average daily rate, how many days it's available for. And of course, you can find out all kinds of analytics about the properties, but the short of the long is, in the town, there's 34 active rentals on VRBO and Airbnb at the moment. So, and this gives you an idea of, the revenue and occupancy rates. Whereas I know the city definitely has, I can't remember what I said to the town board, but let me see. I think the city of Ithaca has some, like, around 700 between the city and the town have 700 rentals.
So does this, and most of them, surprisingly, are not on the lake.
Let's see. Yeah, they're kind of, there's a bunch of them up the lake here.
Yeah,
So
there's some of them up the lake, but there's
here's
a lot
one.
that aren't, surprisingly.
Yeah, looks like there's a few country views, right? In the Finger Lakes, near Cornell. Near Cornell seems to be a thing.
There's a tiny house.
Oh, a tiny house.
Here's a tiny house. Okay.
Huh.
So, we could go to that, and I think it takes you right to the listings. So, there's some, but but if this is about preemption and getting ahead of it, then I think we can certainly coordinate with fire. I can talk more with Lynn about this and some of the challenges he foresees with monitoring this. Although obviously, we could sign up for an Air DNA account and we'd solve part of our battles in terms of enforcement, because we'd be able to see. I mean, we could even have it send us alerts if there's a new listing, right, that hasn't registered with the town. And so, we could stay on top of it that way. Not that I want to be like the nanny state here, but,
Well,
if this was a concern about,
That-
Go ahead,
That's what
Larry.
we're talking about, basically.
In these ones that are already listed, they would not be like grandfathered in, correct?
No, they'd have to have the same requirements.
Right.
yeah, I'm, not sure how the town of Ithaca addressed that. I don't know if anyone
Well,
else.
if
is
they
familiar
didn't,
with
the
that.
town would be liable if something happened and they didn't have the proper safety devices in hand.
Let's see if there's anything in these. The town of Ithaca's scheme for monitoring this involves a whole host of local laws. That there's one about accessory dwelling units. There's one about requirements for certain residential units, operating permits for certain residential units, the registry itself, and then the inspection list. So, there's a lot to it. I mean, it seems like they put a significant amount of effort into coming up with these regulations, and so we can certainly start to work off this as a framework. But this is pretty. This is a pretty aggressive approach, I would say. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's would go from being a lot or to have no enforcement, to have a whole suite of local laws dedicated to it. But I support what the planning board and town board want to do. We just need direction on how you'd like to proceed. Now, do you want to proceed kind of like we did with solar and wind and really pull this out as like a main priority while we're going along with the audit? Maybe I need to stop screen sharing here.
I would think that there's a lot of, in Ithaca, where they have 700 of these, number one, then the effort put into trying to regulate them is probably worth it, because there's a definite risk there for the, when you get that many people, you're gonna have that many more bad actors. What we need, I would think, or I would propose, is that just a simple set of rules that would try to keep people safe and keep people from lying about their, showing a picture of the place from 20 years ago when it looked that
Well,
way.
we stayed in
So
those
sell it.
places, huh?
Yeah. And I mean, those kind of things to keep people from being defrauded and to keep them safe. Does the health department have anything to do with Airbnb? Probably not. CJ?
I don't believe so, other than the adequacy of facilities, well, septic. Someone
Right.
else might be able to provide a better answer to that, but
I'm not
unless-
sure the town's in a position to be able to go out and inspect each of these, to make sure that exit lights are working and fire systems or sprinkler systems or whatever's required are ongoing, and take the responsibility to make sure those things are working.
Yeah, I'm looking at the town of Ithaca's checklist here, and here, let's go back to share for just a moment. And also, yeah, so this is the city and town of Ithaca combined.
Wow.
Here. This boundary is kind of weird. It like mostly covers municipal boundaries, but then I don't know, maybe this is some kind of census tract or something. I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but this is showing 608 active rentals there for this piece.
Looks like some of those
You had a
are
question?
other townships, but they're probably Ithaca addresses.
Oh, maybe this is zip. Maybe this is 14850.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, that's entirely possible. Okay.
Just to throw in one more wrinkle, Essex County has a 90-day occupancy limit for rentals owned by non-residents. Now, the other thing for us is to figure out how many of the rental properties are owned by non-residents, which would be good for the town to know.
Okay. So units owned by non-residents. Okay.
And then how do you define a resident? If they're a citizen of New York or of
The
the.
New York State
In other
tax.
words, I'm thinking if I rented my place out while I was down in Florida, for instance, I went there for the winter and some idiot wanted to stay here for the winter.
Well, I would think
I be a non-resident at that point?
I would say it would be legal residency in the town where the property is. And that legal residency is 6 months plus 1 day, right?
I think so, yeah.
ah. Well, isn't part of the
But
issue also managing the place?
That's right. If you have a local manager, I don't see what the difference is if you're a resident or you're out of state owner. If there's a local manager, it shouldn't make a difference. There is somebody to call on if there is a problem or concern.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
And some of the neighbors can call if there's a concern.
I have a
Well, the neighbors are
question.
gonna call anyway.
We work for a fraternity house, my company, as an agent for the city of Ithaca because the owner of the frat house are alumni who live outside the state. And so, our telephone number, all of our contact information is available for the city or anybody else to contact if there's an issue.
A couple of the local realty management companies that I know of also manage short-term rental, Airbnbs, et cetera. And they take care of immediate maintenance problems, cleaning between renters, things like that.
Sandy, you had a
So-
question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering the liability for the town if we do have a law and if we don't have a law. So if something happened and somebody was renting a unit and we didn't have a law and there was a fire and somebody got injured or something, and can they, is the town partially liable because we didn't have a law, or would the town be more liable because we did have a law?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question.
The answer is yes.
We have a law and it's
Doug.
not sufficient to cover the problem. Does that increase our liability? Doug, do you know?
My biggest concern here is if we start lumping this all in with sprinklers and things like that, with our 30 some units, we've got no systems that can, we've got systems that can carry it, but huge infrastructure costs in putting sprinkler systems in.
Yeah, I doubt you'd need sprinklers on anything with low occupancy.
I agree with you. I agree
Less
with
than
you.
30 or 20.
But you start lumping that in with a hotel, all of a sudden you're in the same neighborhood.
Remember, New York State wants to change that. They have every year for the past 10 years.
Code, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
No,
you're looking at it taking people that are now renting, and I'm not advocating for them at all, other than they're now renting places out, and all of a sudden the code enforcement comes in and says we have to put a sprinkler system in, and in some cases, in several cases, that I can think of, especially out of the lake area, because I know most of the places we got water other than Lansing Station Road in areas. It's hard to get that sprinkler system in with a well.
You certainly can't do it off a well
No,
because you need 50 pounds of pressure.
especially down on the lake, in the lake area.
Yeah, we did one on Etna Road, 3-story house, so it required a sprinkler system, and basically we had to put in not only the fire department connection, but we had to put in a very large storage tank
Right.
inside the structure.
So
So it was
basically you had to put a pond in somewhere.
Yeah, inside the structure.
Right.
And the pumping system.
Yes.
So and that's a huge cost for people that are like, hey, I'm just trying to make a little extra money.
Right.
And so
That's not feasible for most people.
that's
some sort of fire system probably is. Fire detection system is probably feasible for most people.
Hardwired.
Smokes and
I would think
CO.
that would be almost to a building code situation.
Yeah.
And if they're renting them out, there's certainly no reason why you can't go in, especially now with all the battery operated systems, that you could do that.
Yeah, smoke, COs, means of egress, and potentially fire extinguishers,
And parking.
just the basics.
Yeah.
Well, parking's an issue anywhere down on the lake. They could park in the water maybe. I don't know.
Well, we've got in our zoning code some regulations about parking. Is it just 2 parking spots for a residence, single family residence? Is 2 parking spots, but if you ended up renting out 4 rooms in that residence to 4 different sets of people, maybe there should be no parking on the street because there's no room for parking in the lot.
That would be a condition then with regard to how much lot they have.
But the problem is, like Larry brought up, is how do you enforce it? And we don't want to make a law that's hard to enforce.
We're on a fine line here, and I think, my own opinion, and I don't mean to go on and on and on, but my own opinion is, let's look at Skinny Atlas, somewhat similar, at least the town, and look at these other places Larry brought up, where we've got some, they've got this situation. The town of Ithaca is huge, and that's fine. We can look at that as well, but we gotta figure out our best spot to either limit what, at least in my opinion, limit what we have to for the people that are already doing it, and not putting an overburden on them, and then not putting overburden on any of our code enforcement at this point. You
If
know,
we're looking at less than 30, then, I mean, I don't know, are we expecting this to grow? Is it something that we think in 3 years could be 60 or 80? Or is 30 kind of where it's gonna sit in a town this size?
I'll just point out that as the town of Ithaca puts in these regulations, the Lansing looks different now because we're a place where you don't have these regulations. It's
Right.
easier to put your B&B up here. And so that could put pressure on us that we don't see yet.
Yes.
Hey, here's another thing. If we don't have regulations and if something happens, then the responsibility tends to devolve on the property owner. However, having discussed this at a public meeting and then maybe having decided not to have regulations, we could already possibly be in the hole.
I don't think we go without regulations, Larry. I think we have to come up with something. But I don't know that.
I don't disagree with you, Doug. I don't disagree with you.
I think we got to get to a point where we can fit it for Lansing, as we see it. What are we talking? 10% growth a year? That's 3, right? So, I mean,
Like 3 1/3 the following year.
that's true. That's true. And people, I've heard on the grapevine that the people are coming here and buying lakefront property. So,
For Airbnb purposes. So this could be a business that just mushrooms.
it could be.
We really need to be in front of it with at least something in place
Right.
that's easily modifiable in case everything goes out of whack.
Right. And so I guess all the suggestions at least in my eyes, or how I see it, is all the suggestions we've had. Can we get the fire chief involved? I think he probably would agree to that. You know, how do you get there, this, that, and the other? I mean, and the other thing with lakefront, as we know with the zoning and how we set up everything, lakefront's silly looking lots that go every different way. So, I mean, it's going to have to be something we can adjust to in that regard. You know,
I think we need to have a little bit, or at least a roadmap of the regulations that we want to put in place before we can ask either Lynn or the fire department to give their opinion on how much they'd like to be involved in enforcing it. We have to have some idea where we want to be to give them an idea of whether they want to get involved or not.
I don't think we want to go beyond 3 items. Fire and smoke, carbon monoxide warning, egress of proper points of egress for the building itself, and proper access for emergency vehicles. Screw parking, emergency vehicles.
Emergency vehicles, yeah.
Well, that's already in the building code, isn't it?
I think it gets played fast and loose with sometimes on properties that we haven't had any input on how they're developed.
So we would have to have some way that these things would have to register with the town in order for us to be able to keep track of whether they're going in or not.
How about if they're advertising on a internet site such as an Airbnb? Then yeah, if they're going to go to that length.
Yeah,
The town could pay for a subscription to something like the Air DNA, and then we'd just get a notice, or we could set up some kind of thing that scrapes those pages and sends us an email or something when somebody posts a new rental within the town.
I think it's a good idea to have people inform the town when they're going to set up an Airbnb in their property. I mean, I don't think that that's overly onerous, and I think that it would be good for code enforcement and for planning purposes to know how many of these things are going and where they're going and if they're increasing, and all the data that we could get from that kind of thing would be useful. And it's not putting too much trouble on people who are collecting an average of $265 a night I was seeing. When you
Right.
get Airbnb,
But once
DNA
again,
set up.
At what point do we get to the point where, like we had in Myers, somebody wanted to do an Airbnb and other people who were already renting their places out objected to it and stopped them from doing it?
That's a problem.
Yep, I agree.
I think we were led by the nose on that one, and even though we did it for the right reasons, that's an example of what I was just talking about.
But we did that one for septic system.
Yes.
That was down at Ladoga, right?
Right, that was an expansion.
Can I say something? Can I have
Go
a
ahead,
minute?
Al.
Yes.
I think we're missing the point here. The reason the town of Ithaca is implementing this is the incompatibility with transient occupants with long-term residents. And that's the concern, is the noise and the activity back and forth in an established residential neighborhood. It's being on a lake, you're going to have a transient crowd, whether it's the town of Ithaca, Lansing, or Skinny Hills. That's normal. And being in a rural area, if you're renting a house in a rural area and there's acreage around the house, and it's not in an intense development, that's okay with the town of Ithaca. It's the rentals that are transient in residential areas that are highly developed, and that activity that's incompatible is where the biggest concern is. Not necessarily fire and safety. It's more compatibility and the residents, just like on Emmons Road. That's more of a residential area, and the transients on Emmons Road is causing concerns with the neighbors there. So it's more of the noise, the activity, that type of thing is where I think we need to put more of our emphasis on. And is it incompatible with certain neighborhoods?
So I think that there's two things going on. As you mentioned, Al, certainly for the short-term rentals, compatibility is the major issue. But overall, in rentals, you'll see that if I'm not mistaken, the town of Ithaca is now making everybody who rents at all do the registration and safety inspection and pay the fee.
I see that.
So everybody has to do that long-term or short-term. And then there's the extra consideration for short-term rental of how does it fit in, or how compatible is it with the neighborhood?
Yeah, you make a good point. Yes.
What Al was talking about was a case study, I think about 4 years ago in Saratoga at one of the seminars at the conference, where a 6-bedroom home completely remodeled it and was renting it out during the racing season to, I believe, a dozen non-related people. And it was right in the heart of a residential district. So that's a very good point.
So we would tend to see a lot of that at graduation time and homecoming games.
Correct.
Well, even if you were, had a residential house on the lake and you had, people renting the house next door and they're on vacation, they're partying all night long and you got to go to work. I mean, that's an issue I could see where it would conflict with.
If you live on the lake, if my memory serves me from the times that I spent there, you learn to put up with a lot of extraneous partying because that sort of goes along with being on the lake. But if you live out, say, on Emmons Road, where you're in a quiet residential neighborhood and suddenly you introduce a lot of parties every weekend, you can start seeing the neighborhood come up in arms.
Well, that doesn't mean that someone on the lake doesn't want a nice, quiet environment. So
yeah, but you never get it. But I agree with you.
Well, some of us do.
Well,
Depends
Some of
on,
us have
find
good,
that spot.
quiet neighbors.
uh-huh.
What about insurance? Do we have to worry any, I mean, we're assuming that anybody that's renting their property has the proper insurance. I mean, I don't see us tracking it, but
If I want to get a building permit at all, I have to give proof of insurance. That's a pretty basic thing. And
right, but not if you're renting your
no,
existing.
not if you're renting your home, but if you have a brain, you do.
It's usually a rider on a policy.
I think a
Right.
lot of individuals don't realize that their homeowners doesn't cover renting it out for commercial use. So I think there's a lot of Airbnbs that are not insured.
The rentals offer separate insurance for the people who are coming in, and you can buy insurance, liability insurance and damage insurance, and you can buy vacation insurance. But they're all available. That's not to say that everybody gets them, but I know that the ones that I've gone to, the owners, I don't know who it was that said it, but the owners, if they got a rental property that they're making a substantial income off each year, then yeah, they're sure as heck going to have property insurance.
so CJ, I don't think this meeting tonight was about Airbnbs. We're going to go through our audit, but we started here.
That's okay.
We need to set up we're going to need to set aside some time to discuss this. And we'll want a recording of this meeting when we're there so we can just play it and we don't all have to figure out what we came up with.
Do we want to think about putting a committee in place to start drafting this law, since average draft law time is about 3 years? In my experience.
Just gonna ask about a scope of work.
I would like to be on the committee.
Let's set
Yeah,
up
I'll
a
work on that one.
I've been forbidden to set up any more committees, so if it's committee of the planning board, then
if we can set up or write up a scope of work for it, definitely a defined scope of work that restricts going outside of that scope for the committee, then we could start a planning board committee of 3 that would be able to get together and put something together. But I'd like to see us have a scope of work first, rather than just open-ended.
okay. So and I was partially kidding about the committees, of course. Who would want to be on the committee? I saw Sandy and I saw
Deb and Sandy.
Al, and I see the entire planning board. Okay.
And Larry, and Al.
Not me.
Okay, the minus.
Deb, Sandy, Larry, and Al. We could make it up to 4. But let's come up with a scope of work and let's approve it at planning board level at least before we spend a lot of time on it.
Okay,
Make
sounds
it
good.
an easily attainable scope that you're not taking care of every problem, because prior experience shows us that whatever you come up with is going to be chewed over in the meeting pretty heavily. So just take it, just do the job and get it done with an idea of getting something done quickly.
What's the time frame?
Day after tomorrow.
Okay, we'll
I
have
would
it to
be-
you.
Yeah, scope in 30 days.
Single spaced or double spaced?
I would think by the August meeting. Do you think that's something that y'all can get together, or is summer a bad time to do that?
We've got email,
The second meeting in August.
Yes. No, it'd have to be the first meeting or the first meeting in September.
So
Since
30 days.
Meetings.
September sounds better.
Yeah.
That's
does.
September. Larry, do you want to be the chairman? No, Sandy, do you want to be the
Sandy
chairman?
can be the chairman.
I was gonna say Larry can be the chair.
Yeah, Sandy, if you'll be the chairman of this committee, I'd appreciate it.
Hey, I'll get my whip out.
Is it the a draft or just
Oh,
the scope of
please.
work you're looking for in 30 days?
A scope of work and a draft is fine, as long as that scope of work is not overly energetic,
No worries.
overly encompassing.
Okay, so wait, so I
Do we
think,
want to go on to number 59?
sure, I just want to confirm so that committee is chaired by Sandy, also includes Deb, Larry, and Al.
Yep.
Okay, and
And can they use Zoom to meet?
of course.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know much about the personal Zoom meetings. I always go into meetings somebody else is smart enough to set up.
I know how to set up Zoom.
Okay, so maybe you can put together some Zoom meetings and make life easy on everybody.
Is that a 4 people a quorum?
Yes, it is.
Is 3?
Yes.
Hold on a second. How many members do we have? 7?
Uh,
Right? Yeah, so 4 is a quorum.
Oh,
So we better go with 3 people on the committee, or we've had committees with more than 3 of us before.
Or we could post it. We just posted as a meeting, and I would need the link to be able to advertise it.
I think that we drop it down to 3, we can, so that we don't need a quorum. It makes it a lot more flexible and things are easier to get done if you don't have to advertise meetings.
You still have to advertise committee meetings of the planning board. They're open meetings according to the
yeah.
open meetings law.
Yeah, exactly. They're open. Yeah.
So how far in advance do they have to be advertised? There's no, all of us have tonight free so we can get together.
I'm trying to
can
think
do-
of how far ahead.
They
We can
like
do a lot
3
of that
days,
by
but
emailing without having the meeting. We can set up items by email and then have a specific meeting about them. And we can contact CJ about the meeting.
Okay, keep me informed if you can, keep me in the loop of what's going on, because I might want to attend too.
So,
All right, so we'll email back and we'll start with the email, and then when we have some concrete discussion points, then we'll have a Zoom meeting,
Yeah.
right? Is that what you're
Is
saying,
that
Larry?
legal?
yeah.
yeah, we could have a notice of special meeting, say, we could pick a time that everyone's available and we could just post it. So that works too. Just have to let me know a little bit in advance. And if you want to, once you have this kind of but if you even just have like 5 or 6 bullet points of things that you really think should advance to the scope of work, you could send that to me and I can kind of flesh out a little bit of the rest of it and think through the entire adoption process and kind of estimate how long that will take. So, does that sound good?
Number 59.
Okay. We don't have a minimum or maximum density requirements. Well, we have minimums, and well, no. Yeah, we have dwelling units per acre, but we don't have. Theoretically, if you had a large enough parcel, you could have almost limitless dwelling units on it as long as you went through site plan review. Like if you had X thousands of square feet, you could have as many dwelling units as long as you went through site plan review. Is that something you feel comfortable keeping?
Aren't we limited by lot coverage and setbacks? But you're talking about a huge process.
Yeah, I'm talking about a significant property, say that somebody might think about developing a lot of it without necessarily subdividing, such as say like a cluster development. Somebody had enough acreage. Let's take a look here. Let's go to the land use ordinance here. Let me bring up the audit too.
That's why we originally designed the PDA tool.
Okay. And tell me more about that.
Well, for instance, we would allow cluster development with a certain amount of open space on the property. Going back to the Horizon subdivision. The first one that we did. we had those 3 or 4 clusters of 2-unit of duplexes, and then they were centered on a parcel of land that had to have so many square feet undeveloped. It's free space, but it would go with that parcel.
Okay. But PDA usually comes with some kind of outstanding, either resident amenity or community amenity or something like that.
Not
I'll just-
always, but in that case it did. There was a swimming pool that was available to the people in the cluster housing and available to the single family residences.
Okay, and so that was enough of a significant amenity to create a new zoning district.
Or
but-
Village Solars has got their community building, right? That's the same kind of issue.
I don't believe we made that a requirement at the time. The major requirement was the fact that if you were going to cluster houses, then so many square feet of open land have to be maintained.
Oh, I heard that
Yeah.
the community building was part of that and it had to be open to the surrounding area. But I mean, that's rumor that I heard, so I may have been misinformed.
Well, I think that it made its way into the final requirements of the PDA.
But
But originally, all that we were concerned about was making it so that they just couldn't overdevelop, just keep pounding houses into that same space. Which
is a lot coverage issue. Like up
Yeah.
here, Trip Hammer Road or Proville Road for whose SDM is doing it now, going to build the houses up there, or the rental units. We're allowing them all to be close together, but they're only allowed to cover as much as they would if they were separate houses on that much land, right?
That's correct.
Right,
So-
I think what I'm trying to,
Go ahead.
what I was trying to mention was something like in the rural agricultural zone, for instance, there's no minimum open space, and the minimum lot area is 40,000 square foot per dwelling unit. So theoretically, if you had enough lot area, you could do quite a significant development on a single parcel. is what
Without
I'm trying to say.
subdivision, without planning board review.
Excuse me, no, with planning board review. But that's, as we all know, things that are allowed by site plan are still allowed. So I guess that's where I'm going is there any desire to see any maximum density and not just minimums? And maybe there's not, but sometimes that's
I
used
guess
in.
I'm still not understanding what you're saying. If you had 1,000 acres and you wanted to put 1,000 houses on it, you could do that without too much difficulty, as long as you'd probably end up at 950 or something, which took out roads and areas for rain gardens, etc. But so is that the kind of situation we're talking about?
No, because then you'd have a zone, a development.
Well, you're not selling them
subdivision.
to anybody, so it all is one property.
Well, I guess that's kind of what I'm asking is,
how
would
do you
you
get that?
want to see a maximum density in specific areas of the town? Not necessarily all over the town, but in some areas, would you want to see a maximum residential density?
Well, we do.
Think about it. but-
Isn't that
Where
controlled?
the proper, in zones where a single family residence has to have at least 1 acre, that's a maximum density. We already have that.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that's not I would consider that to be a minimum. So if you have 40,000 square feet or, just shy of an acre, you can always just build a house.
Yeah, but you can't build a house if you have less than an acre.
Right. So we're talking about, let's see if I can find a better way to go over this. There, in some neighborhoods and in some areas, it's practice to establish a maximum density for the entire neighborhood or an entire zone, so that once that is met, then no additional units would be permitted.
I may be thick, but I'm having a difficult time in differentiating between what you're saying and between us saying that you have to have an acre for each individual dwelling unit.
You could take like a hamlet zone and say that there's 80 houses in this zone and you're not going to allow more than 90. Is that what you're saying, CJ? So you'd have a zone that's listed as a certain zone and it'll only have so many dwelling places.
Right, exactly. So a maximum density for an entire area. I've just heard some concerns lately about people, for instance, wanting to build on farmland, for instance. It's establishing a maximum density could be helpful to minimize that. I think that's what I'm saying. And I'll try to send some info that helps clarify this.
I'm beginning to be uncomfortable with the direction you're going with that.
Okay, all right.
You can figure that out? I need a picture on that one, CJ.
Okay.
Or an example of some sort.
I think what she's trying to say is you have 1,000-acre area that's 1 acre per house, but you put a maximum cap of 800 houses there. And however it develops, once it hits that cap, you stop development in the area. So you're not deciding, which has to be a 2 acre, which has to be a 3 acre on that spot. But overall, you don't want to get more dense than the 800 houses. For reasons, say, you don't think your road network could carry more houses out of that area than 800 houses would provide in terms of traffic. But you don't want to specify exactly where each of those houses go, which has to be a 2 acre and which has to be a 1 acre. Am I getting that right, CJ?
That's way better than I was explaining it. I'm pretty.
Isn't that why we have all the zones?
Yeah, we're already doing that with the zones. I would think we'd want to be very, very careful on how we set that up, because it seems to me you're close to constituting a taking.
I don't think that we have any particular spots that are vulnerable to that kind of thing due to their, some certain characteristic of that spot. Do you have an example in mind, CJ?
Well, I think this is something we talked about a little bit, and that I'd like to have the Cornell, just to back up just a moment, the Conservation Advisory Council is working on a natural resources inventory right now. And one of the things that they're thinking about as an analysis, and I think we spoke about this last time, was looking at what a total build out would be, say, under the current zoning, right? If you took all the land in the town and you determined what the maximum build out was, we can actually map that and see that. So
unless they base that on available aquifers, it's useless.
okay, yes, and there can be constraints applied. That's kind of the whole idea, is you're pulling out publicly owned lands and other lands that are in conservation, for instance, and then based on soils or all the whole host of other factors, you can then figure out what the total development rights are. So we could actually see this play out. And maybe that's a question actually for after you see what the full build out could be under the zoning. I think that's kind of where
Yeah,
we're
to see
going.
if there are certain problem areas.
Exactly.
Definitely could run into trouble due to access or.
Yeah, like Larry's saying about water availability, right? Like
Yeah.
that.
How about sewer availability?
Absolutely.
That's what
Any
the
of
1 acre lot minimum is designed to take care of.
Right. But how many of those acres are in wetlands? And if you had a sewer, you could theoretically develop it a lot more.
Right, exactly. So we could see, okay, and maybe this is a question for as we actually see that build out. What is the theoretical total build out under the current zoning? I think would be really interesting and helpful to see, maybe before we even try to think about answering that question. So, okay, we can move on. Okay. And I'll send some more information about that, maybe this in a little nutshell. Okay. So, are there PDA areas? Yes, we've already talked about those. But PDAs are kind of a tool that should be applied fairly judiciously. And thankfully, I don't think the town has too many of them, right? I think there's like
No, we don't.
6. There's like 6 or 7, maybe. We're just missing the criteria for establishing PDAs other than the process, right? We haven't really, when the developers came in for some of these PDAs where they asked to, substantiate the reasons for establishing those PDAs.
They had to be, first of all, they had to be something that could be applied to the comprehensive plan. In other words, there would be something that would allow desired development in an area that would also fit what's allowed by the comprehensive plan. And the ones I can think of, like Dutch Mill and Village.
You lost Larry, CJ.
Oh.
Larry froze.
Oh. I don't know. Let's see if we can bring him back here.
You have tools to get him back?
I can try. It's really stuck here. Okay, well, I'm trying.
He'll have to dial in again. But I think he was going to bring up Village Solars, but I have to admit I haven't read over all of the rules for a PDA if we have a set. Are you saying that we don't really have a set?
I think we have a
as we go along.
We have a little bit of a procedure, but we don't really ask people to go too far into giving a rationale for why that should be. And in fact, we don't even actually have a form to deal with that. Like if somebody comes in and wants to rezone their property, for instance, I don't have anything to give them other than to ask them for a narrative statement and to provide this information. So that could be a good addition to bring into the zoning are standards for how you would actually establish a PDA and at what point, the planning board would entertain that rather than, somebody wants to do a PDA, let's write a PDA. And usually that's on the developer to do that. Usually developer has to actually provide all the language and write the zoning. And then the town reviews it. So they put their money into actually crafting the language of that. So anyway.
Okay, so that's something that we're definitely lacking as part of this audit is very much a a general roadmap of the PDA process. Is that correct? So we'll want to correct that.
Joe was wanting to say something.
I think we also want to build criteria, because when it comes to the town board, the zoning doesn't really give us criteria as to what we're judging. So we're making a decision, but we have no criteria in the law to say what we're judging it about.
Yep, so as we go through the zoning process this time, we'll need to, we'll need to address this. And that's what this audit is designed to pick up. It's things that we need to address as we go through. So
Yeah.
we don't have to solve it tonight. We just need to see that there's a problem, and we'll take care of it when we get to that point.
You got it. Just taking notes and learning and making sure we're at least examining it and explaining our thoughts essentially on the audit, what we see. That's all, just reporting.
Yep.
Not judging. Okay.
Now we can get to uses.
Okay, so and let me just bring this up here. Yeah, hopefully we can start to roll through this a little bit. Sorry for the delays here. I know everyone's probably getting hot and tired. Okay, changes desirable in the existing business and commercial zones to prohibit specific light industrial activities. I think that we have addressed some of this. I know self-storage tends to be one of those inflammatory, or can be something of an inflammatory use, some other light industrial pieces and commercial zones. And I didn't necessarily see a big difference between B1 and B2 zoning. So just wondering if we want to refine those as far as this light industrial pieces go.
Well, I would think that everything can use refinement, but I can't think that the only place that you can put them now is like the self-storage facilities. Isn't that it? Stuck in the
Light industrial.
out in the agriculture zone?
Yeah, so the mini self-storage things, which those seem to be popping up at quite
They're not allowed in the Rs, are they? RA is the place for them?
Yes, and so that's something of the question is, is that use appropriate in RA? And would you like to allow those perhaps, they're not allowed in B1, but they are allowed in RA.
Are they allowed in B2? No. We don't have a B2.
Yes. Yes, they're allowed in B2. Yep.
So that's why I have one almost next door to me.
Yeah.
Over here by Lansing Plaza.
And I don't mean to just specifically call those out as a,
No, but
calling that use.
As an eyesore, yeah.
Aren't they sort of, I mean, now the small businesses like that have to have a place to go, and it seems that a B2 or the RA are the places for them.
Okay.
I don't know where else you would put them.
So that's a lot of the town. RA is a good.
Aren't we restricting that some with the agricultural zone? Doesn't RA get to be a lot smaller?
Okay, so you've thought through this as part of the previous incarnation of edits.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll go back and take a look at that in relation to this.
I mean, I haven't thought it through, but I'm just considering that the RA zone is going to get a lot smaller, I think.
Okay, yes, I'll let's see, the sign, does the plan designate, well, this is not the plan, it should be the zoning. Does the zoning designate areas where appropriate for mixed use development? And it does, and do you think that that's appropriate? Let's see where it is. So that again is the B1, B2, and RA zones.
My personal opinion is that we don't have enough mixed use, that we still got, what was it called? I can't, Newtonian zoning, is that what it's called?
Euclidean.
It's divided up into its each little succinct part, and we don't have any mixtures or any blending.
Good
So
point.
you can't get a little convenient food market next to the housing where you really need it. You've got to go 5 miles to get to a B zone to get a convenient food market. Is that true? I mean, that's what we were thinking of when we were talking about hamlet zones at one point, was that you'd be able to have mixed use zones.
Mhm.
You could see
Okay.
people could walk or bicycle to a lot of the needs instead of having to drive.
Beyond just the RA.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, because RA, I mean, that seems like a huge swath to actually allow mixed residential commercial development.
I think that it requires some thought, that's for sure.
Okay. All right, that's fair. Okay. Because I'm always kind of confused by that in the land use chart, exactly what they mean by mixed residential / commercial development as a use per se.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, okay.
I'm
All right.
confused by it too.
Because we could just explicitly say, you know, more than one use is permitted in certain zones, rather than calling mixed residential commercial a specific use. That might help clarify that. I'm going to skip this question about renewable energy systems if everyone's good with that. Okay, zoning addressing formula retail and formula fast food. Some places do like to put limitations on formula retail. I had heard some concerns about, you know, big box stores, and maybe this is, its time has come and gone, and, you know, we won't be seeing much more of it again, given the shift in the new kind of market shopping realities. But I figured it was worth talking about. Like it's,
Well, I agree with the comment that says that it's market driven, and we don't really have the population here in Lansing to even, it seems, support a nice little coffee shop someplace, let alone a fast food restaurant.
okay, so what I mean to say is, say somebody comes with the fast food restaurant, you're okay with applying some basic site planning controls to it, but not necessarily worrying too much about the form, you know, because they come with their like kind of standard stock, you know.
No, I think we would all
Plans.
suggest that we'd like to talk about the form, especially after the Dollar General went in and we felt for that one.
Yes.
Okay, what do you mean you fell for that one?
Well, we allowed them to go with their standard form, where a change in the form would have fit the surrounding neighborhood a lot better.
Okay, and
And I think we felt at the time we didn't really have the tools available to us to sort of force that change.
and what do you think would have been, if you could just, any of you, you know, what would be the thing that you wish you could change about that now? If you could,
Reverse frontage, I think, was one of the big items.
okay, the parking not, the building not set so far back with the kind of swath of parking there in the front.
the aesthetics of the building. It would, I mean, I think Al really pushed for, you know, to get more, the building more aesthetically pleasing. And we did
Or-
make some inroads, but not totally what we were hoping for.
A little less industrial.
Right. But we had no means to push that. I mean, they initially wanted to put a building up like the one in the village of Dryden, which is essentially a plain white block building. We got them to dress it up a little bit. And I think we did ask for something even better, and they were hesitant, and we had no legal means or ability to get them to go any further.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
So we would like to address that in a new, you know, as going with the audit, this is a good point that we would like to address as we go through this.
okay. Okay, agree with some control over appearances. Okay, drive-through facilities, is there an interest in limiting them to specific zones? Or,
Well, it would be,
And are you looking at ATMs or are you looking at
Dunkin' Donuts.
different from like a McDonald's or an Arby's? Or a prescription drive-through?
Or a
Yep.
beer depot?
anything that would be a drive-through.
Well,
Well-
it seems to me there's a lot of difference there. Go ahead, Sandy.
Okay,
Well, I was just saying the traffic, I mean, it'd have to be suitable
Yeah.
for that kind of traffic.
okay. Meaning, would we want to limit that to, county and state highways? That would it be able to accommodate, say, that kind of volume?
I would say, I mean, it did, like, Jerry said, it depends on what we're talking about, where, you know, a drive-through pharmacy might have, you know, a handful of customers a day, where Dunkin' Donuts has, you've seen the line, sometimes they're out to Proville Road and beyond. So I guess it just depends on what it is.
So we might need some tools to be able to regulate that. Is that what we're discussing here to look at? Or are we looking at
Well-
not having them in certain zones?
I think it's a little bit of both, perhaps limiting those to certain higher volume traffic areas, but then also being clear about the type of mitigation we would have on a surrounding property from that type of use, because they can have, stacking of cars, like Sandy was just saying. They can have loudspeakers that can be very, do you want a hot apple pie kind of thing.
I think that the biggest resistance on a drive-through on a food establishment is that there's an opinion that it creates more litter. In other words, if you eat the food inside, you're going to throw your wrappers away in the wastebasket. Where you take a drive-through and you eat it as you're driving down the road, there are many people who will toss the paper out the window. And so there's community members that feel that a drive-through promotes litter along the roadways. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's one of the reasons why some communities don't like to see a drive-through in regards to a fast food establishment or any food establishment.
Okay.
I don't think we can cancel drive-throughs, which means that there'll be some place is going to have a drive-through, and therefore you're going to have the litter problem if that's a legitimate concern. But mitigating neighbor noise for the neighbors and traffic concerns could be a problem, but a lot of that it's taken care of, doesn't it, just by the simple fact of needing to be on needing a certain number of customers an hour to make the whole thing pay in many cases. Therefore, it regulates itself to the high traffic roads. Now, of course, we don't want people slowing down and stopping and leaving and entering high speed roads any more than we have to, but it seems to me that they tend to go into the higher density populations, and 20 years from now, that might be a problem here in Lansing, but at this point, I'm not sure that it is.
So drive-through restaurants and drive-through facilities of any type seem to be okay at the moment?
I just don't see very many of them going in the RA zone, just because you don't have enough population density to support them. And if you had one there, most of the problems wouldn't be evident because the population density is so low and the traffic is so low that you wouldn't end up with any problems from it anyway. But maybe in B2, you would want some tools or some of the commercial places where we allow commercial zones to be, we need some tools to address it at site plan.
Okay. Okay, so restaurants with the drive-throughs as we see it right now, okay. And banking, let's see, what do we even call that? Retail sales, somebody mentioned retail sales of liquor. But that, I'm not sure exactly what that would be classified as, but retail
Sandy, was
sales.
that
in
you?
general.
No, it was not me.
In
think it was
grad
Deb.
school, I
That
lived
was
across
Deb.
the beer depot. You could drive through and get your beer.
I remember we used to do that in Texas.
Yeah,
What state, was that in Pennsylvania?
Illinois. No, wait, Michigan.
Okay. I think restaurants are allowed in RA, and so is retail. So are retail sales. So I'm just wondering if we might want to. It seems like we could tailor that a little bit to maybe not allow drive-through establishments, perhaps in RA.
Well, but a lot of our restaurants could be turning, we don't know, but could be turning into drive-through. I mean, that may be the only way you run a restaurant and make any money off it is if you can have some drive-through business.
They
Because
are currently, aren't they?
very many people inside.
I mean, that's what they're all are doing now, or was doing. Maybe there's not anymore, but.
Right, and if you had a pandemic, you'd have to allow them. I mean, it'd be a shame if they couldn't do it because of zoning, even if that wasn't their normal business.
Could some of that be added, I think somebody said, for stipulations on site plan for these particular uses?
So just review criteria, drive-throughs. Okay, let me. All right.
So the tools would have to be there under site plan.
Yeah.
Yep, got it. Okay, so allowed, but meeting specific standards.
Very good.
Of what I'm hearing. Okay. All right. Okay. Cemeteries. Okay, we won't belabor the point here, but cemeteries are currently only allowed by special permit in the RA zone.
Is that right?
That's surprising to me.
Yeah, special
Well,
permits.
Churches are allowed almost in any zone. You would think that churches could have a cemetery if they needed it.
Is all the Lansing cemeteries in RA?
No.
How many is there? 4 or 5?
Oh, there's one on Trip Hammer.
The one by Lansingville or Leadville Road at 34.
Right.
Yeah.
Certainly not RA.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
cemeteries. I would
Yeah,
think
this-
church owned the land and they had enough room to put a cemetery in, are we talking that there's a problem with the neighbors? There's certainly noise problems. Really. Or traffic problems. I mean, what are we trying to mitigate here?
It was really just a question of whether you wanted to address those more broadly or whether you're fine with them being in the RA zone.
What about
And
pet
that's it.
cemeteries? I'm serious, Jerry.
It's a Stephen King novel.
I'm telling you.
I don't want to be buried in a pet cemetery.
I'm just saying that
You don't want to
people
be anybody's pet.
do want
Go
to bury
ahead.
their pets.
Okay, so cemeteries are allowed with special permit.
And pet crematoriums. They're smaller than human crematoriums. Forget it.
Easily.
My wife keeps telling me if I have to explain my jokes, it wasn't a joke.
It's a joke to you. You can laugh in your own head.
Okay, how about a couple more here? Are the means for determining reference points or lines from which measurements are to be taken included in the definitions? We got a couple different answers here.
Well,
And
actually,
Go ahead.
don't they say that if you're on the lake is your front yard?
Right.
Yes?
By definition.
Yeah.
And so I think we're actually fairly clear on determining reference points. I think there's a couple where we might be missing, but overall, I think we're mostly okay. And that diagram is actually pretty good in section 2.
Yeah, I think that we've been working on the diagrams and pictures part.
Okay, so you
may be able to be tweaked, but I think that diagrams are very good in helping to explain the code.
Yes, I agree.
okay, and you said you were working on those? You came up with some already?
Well, we have tweaked some of the diagrams. Anyone here can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me we tweaked diagrams that had to do with flag lots, with the setbacks, and we wrote them out so that they were a lot more easily legible a couple of years ago, it seems.
Okay, and that's the Schedule 2 drawing that we have existing, actually,
Yep,
right?
I think
Okay.
so.
Okay, so more of that kind of thing that would help.
That kind of thing is good all the way through the code, in my opinion, wherever it's useful. But we should not shy away from it.
Okay. I just reached out to the town engineers not too long ago to ask about this, but we have kind of 2 different road profiles. We have one kind of standard road profile, and then we have an alternative. And I'm just wondering if we do want to develop road profiles in different zones. Would we want to see sidewalks in more areas of the town beyond just town center?
I like sidewalks.
I do too, but they sort of changed the character of the town.
Isn't the town's character changing anyways?
Yeah. Yep, it is. I mean, it's going to change over years, but sidewalks are a major addition. There's a lot more than just putting them in. They're maintenance, who's going to shovel them, take care of them. If you've got 300 feet of sidewalk, that's a major job to be able to keep the snow off of within 24 hours.
Yeah.
And who's going to go out there and write them a ticket if they don't, or send them a bill with their taxes if the town's got to go in and do it. I mean, up in the village, we see a lot of sidewalks and it's a different character. Usually if you put in sidewalks, you're also throwing in some sort of curb, granite curbs or concrete curbs. I guess towns use all granite, but I don't think we're in a position where we want to be putting in a lot of granite curbs. Although maybe.
We've just installed, or had sidewalks installed right across from City Hall, or Town Hall, but we don't have any laws about maintaining the sidewalk at all.
That doesn't make too much sense.
We probably should put that on our work plan.
And they don't last forever. We're up north where heat and cool ends up tearing concrete apart.
So
I'm just, was just curious. So we have this kind of one section of road in town center that has these sidewalks, and these are the only sidewalks, right? Okay, and so would we want to see that kind of?
There's some out in the country. What didn't we just have out on Schofield Road or someplace out there? I think it was in the town of Lansing and not Dryden, where they put in some sidewalks.
No.
Oh, I can't remember, but it was big news a few years ago because residents were arguing against it.
Okay, yeah, the only ones I know in the town are in town center. I mean,
Town
do
center.
we want to try to expand those a little bit to at least the areas around town center and maybe near the little kind of hub at Crossroads / Marabato Lansing Market, but maybe not too much further than that? Just trying to connect all of those pieces together.
Sidewalks to nowhere.
Be happy with trails that connected the town center up here to the Dollar General or something, but I mean, sidewalks would certainly be nice.
I'm
but
just noticing a
who
lot
pays for
more.
'em?
There's a lot more foot traffic since the town apartments. I forget the name of them.
Milton Meadows.
Milton Meadows. It was changed so many times I can't remember. I just see a lot more foot traffic, and that makes me nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would think that you could go from Franklin Drive there, where the new building was just put in, to the, the corner of Pruville and Trip Hammer, and up to the Lansing Market, and then also down through the town center to Rogues Harbor. That would certainly seem to make sense. And there's a couple businesses just to the west of that as well, right over towards, Conlin Road there at the other end. And like you said, you could do trails through from the town center, the back way out to Lansing Pizzeria and, that the Dollar General.
Lake Breeze and the Dollar General.
But that,
Okay, so
at the moment, that would seem like the area that would make sense.
Right.
Right.
I
So you
think
see-
right up Conlin Road would be nice.
You up to Sandy's house.
Yeah. Or maybe a little beyond.
I don't need a road or a sidewalk. I mean,
but town center should definitely, that whole area, the 100 whatever acres that are available over there, you want to see sidewalks at least in that area, right?
yeah, not today and tomorrow, but futuristic.
Yeah.
As things develop there, for sure.
Yes, okay, just want to, the idea was to provide some kind of right-of-way profile that we could give as part of that RFP development package so that we could say up front what we were looking for in terms of the streetscape there, instead of kind of
Sure.
negotiating it on like an ad hoc basis. Okay, just want to make sure, but trails, maybe for anything else, kind of all trails leading to town center kind of thing, but, and then town center having the sidewalks. Is that really what I'm hearing? And then,
Well, I don't know. I think there's a need for some post hoc sidewalks also. From like Andy's new building up along past the dog grooming, the first dog grooming place. And then from the Crossroads corner to the other dog grooming place.
Okay, so like a complete streets type of retrofit around
Yeah.
there. Okay, and we are as the traffic impact study hopefully will be wrapping up in these next few months. We should have a sense of what we could do to bring that kind of multimodal approach there. Okay, all right, just kind of curious about, having different streetscapes available to us. Okay,
I'm pretty sure when we were originally putting out the RFPs for the town center, it was envisioned that the road was going to swirl around some and make it all the way from Woods Edge there up to Lansing Markets, and that would all have sidewalk on it, and we'd have sidewalk through that whole development. I don't think there was ever a question about that in the developing. Is there now sidewalks out through the housing back there? I haven't been back there to check it out.
Milton Meadows.
Yeah.
I know
mean,
there's
Some
a sidewalk
sidewalks.
to
Back
there,
to it.
but I haven't been back there
I
either.
don't know. Yeah, from building to building and along it, you would think that they wouldn't have people walking in the roads if they're gonna walk. But I can't remember what we had there.
No, I think there are sidewalks.
I think
Yeah, but
so.
aren't the sidewalks just going to the parking lots? I don't think there's sidewalks connecting the buildings.
Good point.
Yep, that might be it.
Yeah.
and then so did that come up in site plan review or?
What, Milton Meadows or the
Yeah,
sidewalks?
To the sidewalk there? Well, that's a good question.
I mean, I think the sidewalks did, but I don't think we,
We just spent a lot of time getting them to put that sidewalk in coming down to the main road, down to 34. B. 34.
I don't remember discussing sidewalks connecting the buildings in that development.
Right, I don't remember that either.
Yeah.
Okay, so this to connect the site to the sidewalks. Okay, just curious kind of what you talked about with the developers on that.
I do remember we had talked at one time about bringing Conlin Road over to the center, over to the traffic light. And sidewalks going on that.
Years ago, right?
Yep.
Okay, to that,
Sidewalks as they're needed, sort of. Right downtown would be nice.
being at town center?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's downtown Lansing.
right. Of course. That would be a good streetscape piece to include there, but for now, exactly. And not necessarily imposed on other areas of the town. is what
Yeah,
I'm-
that'd wait for future boards to consider.
Okay, and then also, and I think this is another thing could apply only here, is are there design provisions for design compatibility with adjacent structures? And I think that could apply just to specific areas of the town for right now, like town center? Or would you want to see this more broadly? Or in specific commercial areas, or in specific zones only, maybe only in commercial or business zones?
There, we're getting into the form-based zoning where we're telling people what color to make their building and what materials they can face it with. Is that what?
Not that form-based.
Oh, you don't
Well,
have to go, it doesn't have to go that far. It could just be,
Design elements, that's what it says to me.
sure, design compatibility with adjacent structures, like, if most of the buildings in an area have, peaked roofs, would you be required to do peaked roofs even on a larger commercial structure? Questions like that. Or could everything here's a good question. Should everything at town center look like Milton Meadows?
I don't think we want cookie cutters.
No.
I'm
Okay.
with you. I think we want some diversity of architecture,
Like if you, would you lean
but we do
towards,
want it to blend.
okay, and so would you lean more towards Salt Point Brewery or Milton Meadows?
Salt Point Brewery, in my opinion, but
Yeah, I mean, you could potentially look at
I don't know.
certain design elements that you just don't want to allow. So for instance, no steel cladding on the facade, or no flat roofs on the streetscape side, or things like that, for instance.
I mean, even as far as color, I mean, no bright purple buildings or, I mean,
speaking of purple, Sandy, on my monitor, you just turned purple.
I'm Oompa Lump.
But, okay.
In other words, I think we'd like to look at that, but I don't know. I feel I get nervous about having too much control at that point.
But it sounds like there's a couple kind of prohibitions, that, deemed throughout there.
And they were good ones. Yep.
Well, I also think of at Cornell is such an ugly campus because
Yeah.
nothing looks
Yeah.
like anything else.
Right.
You get the rust bucket, and then you get the
Hey, that's my home. The Rust.
well, it is, isn't it? And then you got the armory, or the bunker next door to it. It's
The art
just a
squad I
mess.
like.
The art
Rust
squad
bucket
is
isn't even
okay.
rusting.
Yeah. The Olins,
Yeah.
Well, a lot of this is subjective, so it's hard to put into a rule
yeah.
and could try to get that much control. I think that you have to allow some freedom of expression.
Oh, yeah.
Now
And
it looking like a sore thumb, right?
right. I don't know how you control for that, other than pipe bombs and that sort of thing.
Not following
You don't want to.
that. No.
We want control, but not too much.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
They should
Okay.
exercise standards of good taste.
Okay, well, we'll work on the
Yeah.
design document that tries to articulate
Right.
what good taste
Artic-
is.
But everybody's good taste. You have to take into account
Right.
everyone's good taste.
But are there materials that you definitely don't want to see or do want to see?
It depends on where you're at. Are we talking like the town center? I'd hate to see a Morton building go up there, for instance.
Right.
That wasn't dressed up appropriately.
Well,
But I think that would come, do we have those tools to control for that kind of thing in site development? Site plan?
yes, but
Yes, but
well,
no.
what do you think about precedent images? Like included in a town center kind of packet. I think once upon a time somebody did some like kind of design. I think it was architecture firm. I can't remember which one it was. But
Oh, Holt.
yes, exactly. Holt. It was like it was a while ago now. I want to say it was
Yeah.
like 15 years ago. Okay, I'm just wondering if there's, is there any materials that you just cannot stand? Like, does anyone have any trouble with EFS or?
Are you talking
know what
about
that
the
is.
town center when Holt did the mock-up of the town center?
Yeah.
That drawing was 8 or 9 years ago anyway.
Like, were any of those
Willing to
planning?
plan the whole thing.
Right. And so and that's kind of where the point we are now is, we can move into, we won the money to be able to do the stormwater study, finish the traffic impact study. So we're on the cusp of being able to see additional development over there because those things would be completed. So do you think that it would be helpful to have some precedent images? The precedent images kind of help with, aspirations, like what we want something to look like.
Yes, I have in my head that whole drawing going through there, which is actually more Milton Meadows than it is Salt Point, right? I haven't seen it in a lot of years, but that's sort of what I've always thought of that property looking like, simply because I happen to be on the committee asking for RFPs when we were going by that and talking to Holt and all that. But I didn't think that it was a bad look. I mean, I think it's fairly unobjectionable from most standpoints. Businesses might, if we allow businesses in there throughout it, as a multi-use area, they might like to stand out some from the residential properties, just so people will be able to see them as they're driving down the road.
Yeah, I think that you would probably want to explicitly think about incorporating those businesses in a way that doesn't allow them to come in with their standard package and just build the standard McDonald's, right next to whatever else we want to develop there. I think that's the whole point here is let's avoid the next Family Dollar or whatever by just saying up front that your standard package you put in every place else that doesn't blend into the setting of the other new buildings around is just not going to be acceptable.
Yeah.
And I think it's more for the commercial things that we're talking about, rather than maybe the residential. Residential is going to look like residential, and
Okay.
and certainly
Okay.
the commercial is probably the bigger issue.
Okay. So commercial design guidelines specifically versus
And I'm
worrying
not
too much
sure
about
if
the
we're going
residential.
for because we have water there. I'm not sure if we're going for 3-story or allowing 3-story, because with water, you can do sprinklers. So, since you're not talking about the road, things right out there at the roadside, now this is development that's farther back in the parcel, right? That the elevation could potentially be taller and not have the same kind of feel as if it was right up next to the road and it was 3 stories tall.
Didn't we put a little IR zone out in back of that? I mean, at one point we were talking about, having some room in the back of that property for job businesses.
And I think if you do that, Larry's talk about berming and, separation would probably be something you would want to put into play there. If you had a light industrial that you could allow to be, like things over on Town Barn Road there are all very industrial and metal sided buildings that you wouldn't want something like that in close proximity unless it was adequately shielded.
Well, we certainly could gain some control over the looks of the building from the outside, the appearance, but allowing the commercial or the light industrial package in there, I think would create the whole point when we were starting this out was to be able to have some jobs back in there that people walk to instead of driving to Ithaca for them.
Well, jobs and services both.
Yep, that's true. And along the main street that was going from the Woods Edge there up to the Lansing Market would have been some professional buildings or businesses in some residential looking buildings there. That was at least the hope at that time. Anyway, we're getting too specific probably for an audit.
No, that's okay. I was just curious where you wanted to go with the design compatibility of town center, because I think you're probably going to be seeing another project coming at some point pretty soon. And I'm just wondering how far you want to, go with the design guidelines. And it sounds like what I'm hearing is at least apply those to commercial buildings and not so much residential.
Well, I think that they want to be applied to residential. What Dean was saying was residential tends to be a certain type of building. Although if you ended up with a 3-story all brick building there, we might find it objectionable with all 4-foot by 5-foot windows in it or something. But, in other words, we want it to have some design characteristics right in the center of town. So you want to have something to say over that.
I certainly think that as we look at anything that's commercial, we need to think very hard about our current circumstances and potentially making sure that they have room for outdoor seating areas.
And drive-throughs.
Okay, so there should be some is there already guidance over there on plazas or open spaces for over in that area?
I don't think there is.
No.
Okay.
I mean, if there is, I haven't seen it, but I think there probably should be. It would be interesting to have Larry and Lynn in here to see what their opinions are.
Yeah, I think we need to be pretty concerned as we continue to build that out, that we have a limited amount of space there and that public space is going to be important.
Just remember, it's behind the boys' school.
Yeah,
Part of
what
that
to
is-
turn that into? Has anybody decided yet?
The girls' school is one thing, but isn't the boys' school staying or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that may require, berming and planting.
Big Burmings.
With a cliff on the inside?
Take the bad kids and push them over.
Yeah.
At least keep them, so they have to have ropes to climb in.
No, you have to have a moat. Alligators in a moat.
Yeah.
Moat with alligators.
My only concern with that is the lighting. That's the
Yeah.
only thing that really bothers me is that you can really see the lights from that, from the boys' school.
Mhm.
Okay, so you're
That'll
worried
be
about
something.
Well, Larry's designed,
have to deal with
drive
that.
on top berms with, that are 6 feet wide on top. So we can make it happen.
Yep.
Okay, and speaking of that, would you like to see some kind of specific, lighting schemes or some kind of standardization in the signage or lighting or any of those kind of site features that would kind of continue through the entire site? Or I'm trying to understand the vision for town center.
Yeah.
I think it's challenging looking back on all the documents to really understand.
You want it to meet up with Deborah's good taste.
Naturally.
And yet have enough room for flexibility so that it doesn't get too boring.
There you go.
And a good transition from the town center to the ag lands that are beyond it. So you want a good transition, so you don't go from this compact, residential town
True.
center kind of area to, without a little bit of a buffer through.
Are we doing anything in there with street lighting?
That was the question is, would you, want some kind of consistency in lighting throughout
Well, in
town
the
center, at least in
street lighting,
public areas?
There's
street
lightings on the
lighting we
buildings,
certainly
right?
would have.
I mean, there's existing lighting on the buildings shining to the parking lots and whatnot, right?
Right.
Yeah.
These days of LEDs, there's a lot of things you can do with street lighting. And I would think that it'd want to maintain on the main streets all the way through.
Yeah, to be consistent.
So are we talking about underground power in this area? Buried utilities?
I think it is
Yeah.
now.
Okay.
I mean, that's certainly one thing that I would envision. I see as you drive through the village on Triphammer Road that you have above ground utilities through there. And then they put lighting in some places those interfere. They've got street trees that are potentially going to have to be severely cut back at some point because of the above ground, power and communication cables there.
Oh, I would think everything would want to be below ground, underground lighting, underground utilities all the way through. Not underground lighting. That would have to be on poles.
Oh, geez. Now, aren't these things, isn't all land divided into different plots, A, B, C, D, and E?
It could be. I mean, that's the way it's been presented, but it
Yeah.
doesn't quite exist that way as parcels yet.
And there's with the wetlands running through there, there's some, might have to be some finagling, but are you saying different little hamlet kind of? I don't think it's big enough to make very many changes going through there.
Now, I'm just thinking that you might have different people buying different segments in there.
Right, but I think the best maybe outcome would be if the next person who, or a company that developed something back there would do something very nice that we're all very happy with, and then we can take that and say, we want the same kind of lighting throughout the rest of the development there.
So one of the original plans back there, I think if we remember correctly, called for single family dwellings back in there. 40 of them or 30 of them or something like that.
Yeah.
That were all going to be theoretically on a septic system or a package plan or something with city water. So they were going to be able to be on small lots and be sort of a backdrop to the units that are there now. I don't know if that plan is changed or if it's anything like that, but that would be a completely different than putting out, well, maybe not, RFPs to a big company to come in and do, a senior citizens building if you were going to do that. If you even can anymore.
What do you mean?
Well, you would be called an ageist if you built a building only for seniors these days, wouldn't you? You get in some trouble.
Well, we've got 10,000 people turning 65 every day for the next 20 years, so we better figure it out.
Well, the comp plan calls for senior citizen housing. It's
Yep, back in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the
Yeah,
developers was going to mix it up with some seniors in with low income, in with market-based housing, all in the same building. But I think that plan went awry.
And would, okay, so if the building were mixed use, it was mixed commercial and residential, then the design guidelines would apply. And if it were commercial only, design guidelines would apply. But residential only could be maybe more flexible.
Good summary.
Okay, and then, so, my idea would be to include information on, pedestrian and other kinds of circulation, access and parking, to be clear about, you know, how many spaces you could have kind of clumped together until you'd need specific landscaping, to be clear about the plazas or any kind of public spaces, the lighting, utilities, and then service and delivery pieces, like, you know, where dumpsters and all that kind of stuff should go. I mean, maybe you dealt with that during Milton Meadows, but yeah, I was thinking a guide to kind of go along with town center to say, this is really what we expect from the public realm, at least that much.
Right, and you might think about how much low rise you want to see in there that's, again, 3-story or 4-story. And, you know, when you talk about how close the buildings are to the sidewalk or the curb, again, thinking about if you're going to have mixed use on the first floor, that they might need to be set back 30 feet in order to be able to get, you know, tables and chairs out there, things like that.
Okay, so like a range of you know, I mean, there's no required setbacks there. I think it's B1. So as long as it's site plan, you could have, you know, a really small minimum setback. But is there a maximum you'd like to see imposed there in terms of how far you'd want to see a building away from the street? Or do you think Milton Meadows is close enough?
It's hard to
How
judge
much-
Meadows because you got the brewery in front of them.
Yeah, there's not much road frontage after that.
Yeah.
Well, it goes for a little while.
Well, isn't
Past
that, yeah, but isn't that wetlands?
Hilliard.
I mean, Louise Bement Way or Lane, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Ah.
I'm saying is Milton Meadows, do you think it's close enough to Louise Bement Lane, or would you happy where it is, or would you bring it a little closer? Or would you want to see those areas be more public use or something along there?
Again, I think it depends on the nature of the building. Maybe if it was a building that had mixed use, you might not want to see it quite as far away. I mean, one of the features there, of course, is a big ditch that makes, you know, public access from the roadside kind of impossible. But if it's just housing by itself, that's a different story. I kind of like the way Milton Meadows is set back a ways.
Okay, and if the plan is to look at the stormwater for the entire site, to develop site-wide stormwater controls, as I understood it, that's something the town engineer recommended at the time that development was put in. So we're planning to move forward with that.
Good.
To have okay, good, okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, and then the traffic impact study would also be site-wide as well.
Oh,
And
good.
that's almost done.
Nice.
Okay, all right. I'm just trying to piece all these things together to kind of see, because the vision of town center is murky to me, and I want to try to clarify it for.
No worries.
And I'm-
there.
Yeah, it's murky to everybody because
Yeah.
It keeps
there've
changing.
been a lot of ideas put forward. And like Sandy said, it keeps changing.
Okay, so maybe a design guidelines document with some of these kind of basic public realm elements might be sort of helpful, at
Would
least on the
certainly be
scale you're
helpful,
talking about.
I'm sure, to future boards.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and we're thinking of something we can just give to the applicants as part of the package to say, and as the site gets more and more shovel ready, I think that we're going to see more and more interest in the site. You know, the more, you know, developers don't necessarily want to deal with sorting out stormwater, you know, so if we can sort that out ahead of time, that's definitely a value add for whoever comes in. Same thing with the traffic impact, right?
Yeah.
So, and some of the other environmental concerns. And if we can
Like
get clear out,
underground utilities.
Yeah, exactly. And so if we can get clear on what you want some of these things to be, then some of that site prep could happen ahead of time. Okay, I think I'm getting a better idea of this. And would you want these designed, like commercial design guidelines to apply throughout the town, not just town center, but other places too?
I don't think that the rest of the town is going to be developed in the same manner. And so a lot of the design guidelines, some of them, of course, are going to follow, but I think a lot of them are not. And I don't think that we want a homogeneously designed town. In other words, we want it to have some differences as you go through and allow people to have some expression.
Okay, right. So the concerns on the projects that have come up before, like I'm thinking of like the event centers. So the event centers, people weren't necessarily concerned with what they look like. It was about the magnitude of the impact of the use. Would you say that's a fair characterization? I wasn't here, so I don't.
Or are you talking like Emmett Road? Emmons Road?
Or I was also
Dutch.
thinking of, yeah, the Dutch Harvest, like these
Dutch
kind of
Harvest.
projects. Like it wasn't necessarily that, like the Dutch Harvest building like looks really nice, right? Like that looks fine, but it's just the magnitude of it is
Yeah.
maybe.
But I think
okay.
even Cargill, when they were putting in the shaft up there, they were going to try to make it rural. You know,
Yeah.
look, it's a rural building on the outside. Nobody was trying to make it change the character of the neighborhood by very much. In other words, the places belonged in an RA zone kind of thing. They looked like they belonged, whether they did or not.
Okay, so have you ever seen that building in Ulysses? The one that's like that gets like looks like a barn, but it's not really. Maybe
The old Babcock.
I can't remember what it's called, but I think it's like a computer company or something, right?
Doug built that.
Chicken factory.
Didn't Dake put that up?
Oh, the one on the
Doug?
west side of the street with the big silos. It's its way
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I like it.
Yeah, it really blends.
Okay,
One silo's a stairway, the other silo's a three-story conference room.
sounds
Yeah.
pretty cool.
An innovative use that blends in, but the use doesn't necessarily blend in, but nobody knows that because it looks like it does.
Okay, and what do you think of that approach?
I think it's kind of cool. I mean, I'm not as concerned about the use as long as it doesn't create, too much traffic or too much noise. If the building looks like it blends in, I can't see anybody having very much trouble with it.
And do you think it blends in because of color and materials, or that it looks like an agricultural building with silos on it? You think it's because it's in the back?
It just looks like it fits there with the surrounding buildings. Not necessarily that it has the silos, but some of the other buildings, probably not many of the other buildings have silos, but your expectations for the building that you're looking at there are not changed when you go through there. I think that when you come down through Lansing by Portland Point, you've got Hagen's old gas station there and that other building there and all the empty lots going back, now they're empty, going back to Cargill, I think is sort of glaring. It's not necessarily what you expect, what you're seeing on both sides of it, driving down the road. So I find those buildings to be a little garish, or that general vicinity there. But I grew up just up the road, so when I was 8 years old, I was walking from there up to the red and white store.
I remember.
Okay. Because some people have ideas about if buildings aren't, if they're just kind of fake, they look like something else, then that's kind of disingenuous. But if it's a agricultural community and buildings look agricultural, does it matter if there's something different in it?
That's my mind.
Any parting thoughts on this? Because form is tricky. This is a tricky one.
Well, I think you could look at
It's
some of the
subject-
existing forms in Lansing, like the Rogues Harbor, or you could look at the storefronts down in Ludlowville and, see if you think that those are attractive to people in the community.
For
As
instance,
examples.
do we allow flat roofs with a fake storefront? And maybe that's sort of what we have at the new building on Trip Hammer Road that just built. Got roofing for the rooftop units.
Oh, is that flat and it just has a facade in the front?
That's what I remember Bray House, one of the drawings Bray House drew seemed to
No, we
have
built
that.
That's
we built that too. That's all trusses.
Is it all trusses?
yeah.
Yeah,
We got
so
rid of
I've
the-
seen buildings that do that, just put.
He originally had it designed that way for HVAC on the back, but it was too costly.
So you put
Yeah.
HVAC on the ground?
No, actually, he originally put it on the roof and then he threw it to the ground. Splits.
Oh, Larry syndrome.
Yeah.
Oh, could you repeat that, Doug? Sorry, we lost you.
He went from the rooftop units on the actual roof on the east side of the building, but that was too much cost because of the structure of the roof. So he dropped them to the ground with the regular HVAC units, and then he decided to go to all ductless splits.
All split.
It's all electric now.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right.
Probably split units are going to be the wave of the future for any buildings that size. That
Yeah,
type-
they're pretty easy to control. In fact, the ones in your office have some pretty neat drop ceiling units in them. Are quite impressive, actually. I'm just not sure yet if they got the hyper splits in there where they can get the heat out of the cold air. So no, that's always been the challenge with a ductless split, was getting heat out of 0 degree or a little less. And you're getting heat, but you're not getting enough heat. So
You have to have strict backup.
so, but if you spend more money, you get a little bit better system with a hyper split, and then that actually goes, I believe, to -5, -7, something like that. So.
Okay,
Okay.
this is pretty helpful. Thank you very much, especially for this last pieces on the design guidelines. Useful. Thank you. So,
Well, it's 9 o'clock. How much further do we all want to go?
901.
9:01.
I'm cutting it off.
There's a board member after my
That's
heart. How far would you
on the
like
right
to
board
get
on
tonight, CJ?
well,
I got through that
sorry,
step.
go. We're at question 71 now. Do we want to keep going kind of the line by line piece, or should I try to consolidate some of the comments, the key comments ahead of time? We've been going with this line by line piece, but I know that it's kind of slow going here. because we've only got one meeting a month to do it.
I think this can go a lot faster with lot sizes.
Okay.
Lot sizes, and I think we've been through that quite a bit in recent years. And with the comprehensive plan, we had some. So I'm hoping a lot of these questions are answered.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just plan to continue next time with lot sizes then?
Yeah. If
Yeah.
we have, I mean, if we have a short, I don't know if we do or not, have short agenda items on the next meeting. I mean, perhaps we could squeeze in a section or something like that. Just a thought.
Yeah,
Do we have the agenda for the next meeting yet?
Yes, yeah, we briefly discussed that. Hold on just a second. So we've got you thinking just add that to the end of the meeting? We've got the Britton Woods major subdivision. There's a couple things to finish off there and hold a public hearing. There's
Are
also
we having the public hearing at the next meeting?
that's the intention. Yes,
Yep.
I think that's what the board asked
If
for.
they
Okay.
bring us the stuff?
Yes, that's correct. And there's also the paddlecraft shed that may be going, depending if they're going to zoning board of appeals tomorrow night to discuss the area variances to be able to cite that shed. I don't know if you remember that one with the, okay.
Now, didn't I read something, CJ, about that particular one, that we could change that through site plan, that front yard setback on the lake, that we could allow buildings to be built on the front yard setback through site plan, and it didn't have to go to zoning?
It just says structures within 30 feet of the lakefront have to go through site plan. So it doesn't allow you to waive the setback requirements.
Okay.
Just that it actually requires site plan review in addition to the area variances.
I chose to interpret that to give us more power than we had.
That's okay. No worries. And then finally is the Maple Avenue minor subdivision. You might recall that one, the 3.3 acres into 2 additional lots on Maple Avenue.
That should
And
be
that's
pretty
it.
quick.
So yeah, so we could, if you'd like, let me just open that up and I can add some review of this to that agenda for a couple weeks from now.
I think
Hopefully
that'd be a good idea.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry it's slow going. I mean, I know you're all kind of teaching me, so.
Well, we're
Only-
learning and all getting on the same page at the same time, so it's good for us.
Okay. So I'll update that agenda accordingly. Add.
Is Sue still helping out CJ or not?
Yeah, she's doing some things remotely. In fact, the transcript is pretty much ready to go. So we'll have that to send out to you soon. And I'm supposed to talk to her on Friday morning too. She's going to be helping with some stuff around the office still.
Okay,
But we
good.
got 51 applicants for her position.
Wow. That's good.
So, yes, and so we narrowed it down to 10, and we'll do some kind of initial reconnaissance here and see how it goes. And Jen's going to be with us through the end of next week.
Okay, good. You got help, a little bit of help.
Yep, and Sue is will be doing what she can remotely, and she's tied into the system. She can even send things to the printer, which is kind of cool. So she's enjoying still being connected too. So yeah, well, tell her you said hello.
Okay.
Yeah. So does that sound good? We'll add that to the end of the agenda, and hopefully we can get through the other pieces relatively quickly, and we can make our way through the rest of this hopefully pretty soon.
Let's see, did we have anything else on the agenda we wanted to go through for tonight?
I think it was just those two items, was the short-term rentals, which we have, the committee has sorted itself out, and the audit appendix of questions.
All right, then. We will adjourn this meeting.
Good night.
Okay,
Good night.
thank you all. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Have to figure out how to get you back. Take care and thank you, CJ.
Thanks, Sherry. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.